You've arrived at CozySideAudio, where dreams begin with a story. Whether you're studying, journaling, or just chilling, this one's for you. If you vibe with this kind of content, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe for more.
CozySideAudio presents The Thanksgiving Road Trip. Chapter 1. The Cancelled Flight. The trouble began with a blinking departures board. Marcus Callahan noticed it first, mostly because he was the only one in the family tall enough to see over the crowd and patient enough to actually read each line. He stood with their suitcases clustered around his legs like loyal but exhausted pets. Navy blue, charcoal grey, and Lila's bright pumpkin orange roller bag that squeaked every third step. Across the airport, the smell of cinnamon pretzels was doing its best to keep morale high. It wasn't working. Elena arrived beside him, balancing 2 pumpkin muffins and 3 napkins. Adrian said his muffin is too moist, which is apparently a crisis. "When did moist become a bad thing?" Marcus murmured, taking one of the muffins anyway. "He's 15, Elena said with a shrug. "Everything is a bad thing." Marcus huffed a quiet laugh, but the blinking screen stole his attention again. Their flight number flickered once, then twice, and then turned a sickly red. Cancelled. He blinked. Oh no. What? Elena followed his gaze. No. Across the way, the kids were slumped on a row of plastic chairs. Adrian with earbuds in, pretending not to exist, and Lila with her coat half off, half on, shredding her muffin wrapper into tiny white confetti. "Okay," Elena whispered, closing her eyes briefly like she was giving the universe a quick but stern talking to. "It's fine. There are worse things." "Name one," Marcus said, not entirely joking. Running out of hot water while shampooing. Getting the wrong pizza delivered. Accidentally liking someone's photo from 6 years ago." He grinned, despite himself. All right. They approached the customer service line, which had expanded into a sprawling, disgruntled shape that resembled a dragon made of rolling suitcases and winter coats. Their kids spotted the look on their faces and stood, approaching like wary wildlife. "What happened?" Adrian asked, tugging out one earbud. Marcus sighed. "The flight's cancelled." Lila gasped dramatically. "But Grandma Rita's house, the cinnamon rolls, the fireplace that smells like pine trees. We can't miss that." "We're not missing it," Elena said firmly. "We're adjusting." "How are we adjusting?" Adrian asked, already suspicious. "We'll see what the airline can do," Marcus said. "Maybe another flight. Maybe a later one." 45 minutes later, they exited the line with fewer answers and more disappointment. "Elena," Marcus murmured quietly, "there's no other flight until Friday." "Friday after Thanksgiving?" She pressed her fingertips to her forehead. "No, just no. My mother will assume we've been kidnapped. Grandma would find us before the police did," Adrian said dryly. Lila tugged Marcus's sleeve. "Daddy, how far away is Vermont if we drive?" He hesitated. "Pretty far." "But not impossible, right?" Her eyes were hopeful and wide, the kind of eyes that made saying no feel like a moral failing. Elena's gaze drifted to the windows, where cold rain spattered in thin, wind-blown streaks. She exhaled. "Well, we did already pack snacks." "That's not the point," Adrian said. "A road trip? Seriously?" Marcus rubbed his jaw, weighing practicality against the flicker of unexpected adventure stirring in his chest. He'd taken this trip by car a dozen times as a kid, back before interstates were improved, before GPS could tell you where traffic was worst, before comfort meant anything more than a clean motel room with a working heater. He remembered those drives, the darkness of the long highways, the small towns with diners serving pumpkin pie year-round, his mother humming softly in the passenger seat while his father tapped the steering wheel in rhythm. "It's doable," he said finally. Elena looked at him surprised, not because she disagreed, but because he said it first. "Okay," she said slowly. "Okay, we rent a car. We drive. It'll be long, but maybe that's not the worst thing. Maybe, Marcus echoed, meeting her eyes. He could already see the story forming, the one they'd tell later, laughing. Lila cheered. Adrian groaned. Elena pulled out her phone. Marcus glanced at the departures board one last time, feeling strangely liberated from it. 15 minutes later, the Callahans walked toward the rental desk, dragging their mismatched suitcases, their mood lifted by the first spark of shared determination. They had no idea that the journey, slow, winding, unplanned, would become the kind of memory that grows golden with time. They only knew that they weren't going to miss Thanksgiving at Grandma Rita's. Not if they could help it. Chapter 2. The last-minute rental car. The rental car desk sat at the far end of the terminal, past the empty holiday display of metallic turkeys, past the vending machines humming like bored insects, past a long stretch of linoleum that gleamed under fluorescent lights. The walk felt longer than it should have, mostly because the Callahans were pulling not only their luggage but also the weight of their newly revised expectations. Lila skipped ahead, dragging her pumpkin orange suitcase with the squeaky wheel. It chirped like a mechanical bird every few feet, a sound that had become so familiar Marcus barely noticed it anymore. Adrian, however, noticed it very much. "Does it have to squeak like that?" he muttered. "Yes," Lila said, cheerful and unbothered. "It's its personality." Adrian rolled his eyes and shoved his hands deeper into the pockets of his hoodie. Elena approached the counter with her practiced, "I've had a long day but I'm still" kind expression. The rental clerk, a young man with a name tag reading Devon, looked like he'd already handled more Thanksgiving week emergencies than any human should endure. He straightened when he saw the family. "How can I help?" "Our flight was cancelled," Elena said, placing her ID on the counter like an offering. "We need a car. Any car. Just something with 4 wheels and a heater." Devon winced sympathetically. "You're not the first family today, believe me. Let me check what we still have." He turned to the screen, typing with the slow, resigned rhythm of someone who knew the universe had run out of favors several hours ago. Marcus leaned close to Elena. "You think we'll get stuck with a compact?" "Please don't speak that into existence," she whispered back. Lila pressed her nose to the counter, watching Devon's screen with grave interest. "Do you have any cars that smell like strawberries?" Devon blinked. I don't think we catalogue scent profiles." "It's okay," Lila said with exaggerated maturity. "I can bring me spray." Adrian shook his head. "Please don't bring your spray." After a few more clicks and one muttered, "Oh boy," Devon straightened. "Good news and slightly bad news." "Start with the slightly bad," Marcus said, bracing himself. "The only vehicle we have left is, well, it's not new and it's not pretty." "Define not pretty," Elena said cautiously. Devon tapped the screen. "A mid-size SUV, midnight blue, some dents, possibly a replacement hubcap, but it runs, strong heater, good tires." Elena turned to Marcus. "We've driven worse." Marcus nodded. "College cars count as worse, yes." "And the good news?" Elena asked. Devon smiled. "I can give you a discount. Holiday spirit." They accepted before he could change his mind. Out in the rental lot, the air was cold enough to make their breath fog. Devon led them to a row of vehicles, stopping beside a slightly dented SUV that indeed looked lived in. Midnight blue, with a tiny scratch on the bumper, shaped almost like a crooked smile. "There she is," Devon said, stepping back with the presentation flair of someone unveiling a masterpiece in a gallery, except less confident. Lila gasped with delight. "She's beautiful." Adrian stared. "We're really driving this all the way to Vermont?" Marcus patted the hood. "Looks sturdy." "Looks like it's seen things," Adrian said. "That makes it wise," Lila countered. Elena popped open the trunk. "Plenty of space. I like her." "See?" Lila said triumphantly. "Mom likes her." Marcus tossed in their suitcases. the thud of each bag echoing in the quiet evening lot. She needs a name, he decided. Elena raised an eyebrow. We're naming the car? We're committing to a long drive, Marcus said. We need morale. Lila clapped. Blueberry. Adrian groaned. We're not calling the car Blueberry. We're absolutely calling her Blueberry, Elena said, sliding into the passenger seat with an exhausted but content sigh. It's perfect. Adrian muttered something about dignity, but he didn't fight it beyond that. Inside, Blueberry smelled faintly of peppermint and something warm, like old vinyl seats that had stored the memory of sunlight. Lila bounced excitedly in the back, immediately beginning to decorate her window with leaf stickers she'd brought from home. Look, she said. Travel magic. Adrian buckled in beside her, slipping his earbuds out again. Travel magic isn't real. Then how come our cancelled flight is turning into a road trip adventure? Lila asked, raising her eyebrows in challenge. Adrian didn't answer, but he didn't pull the earbuds back in either. Marcus adjusted his seat and turned the key. The engine rumbled to life with a surprisingly smooth hum. It felt like relief, like possibility. Elena opened her notebook, the one she always brought on trips, and clicked her pen. All right, she said brightly. Before we pull out, we're starting a gratitude list for this journey. Adrian made a face. Mom. Number 1, she continued, ignoring him. We found a car. Blueberry, Lila corrected proudly. Number 2, Marcus added, the heater works. Number 3, Lila said, Adrian didn't die from the squeaky suitcase. I'm still considering it, he muttered, but a smile tugged at the edge of his mouth. Elena wrote it all down. Then Marcus put the car in gear, Blueberry's headlights cutting a soft yellow path across the damp pavement. With the airport fading behind them and Thanksgiving waiting far ahead, they eased onto the road, tired, mismatched, but together. And the adventure, quiet and ordinary and wonderful, officially began. Chapter 3. The first stretch of highway. The highway unfurled before them in long, wavy ribbons of grey. Not an appealing, silvery kind of grey, more of a misty, drizzling, maybe snow, maybe not grey that clung to the windows and muffled the world. Marcus didn't mind. He had always liked this kind of weather. It felt like the sky was wrapping everything in one long, gentle exhale. Elena, however, stared out the passenger side window with a tight smile. I'm choosing to believe all this fog is atmospheric, she said, and not ominous. You say that like those two things are different, Adrian replied from the back seat, tapping the side of his camera. Lila pressed her forehead to her window, leaving a tiny fog print. It looks like the clouds fell down to take a nap on the ground. Poetic, Elena said, reaching back to squeeze her foot. I like that. Marcus leaned forward slightly, gripping the wheel at the classic 10 and 2 position, spine straight, elbows out, jaw set with intense focus. Adrian noticed immediately. Oh no, he said. He's doing it. Doing what? Marcus asked without looking away from the road. Your dad driving posture, Adrian announced like it was a medical diagnosis. You're basically turning into a statue with a license. Lila nodded sagely. It's true. You could balance a book on your head right now. Elena tried and failed to hide a laugh. Relax a little, babe. You're driving, not negotiating a peace treaty. Marcus exhaled through his nose and tried lowering his shoulders an inch. This is relaxing. No, Adrian said. This is you bracing for impact. Marcus shook his head, but a smile crept in anyway. They didn't talk much for the first half hour. The kind of quiet that follows a disrupted plan had settled over them, thin but stubborn, like a film of dust over polished wood. To break it, Eleanor opened a bag of pretzels and passed it back. Snack offering, she declared. Take what you need. Lila took 3. 1 shaped like a ring, 2 like twists, and declared each shape had a different personality. Adrian took a small handful and then, after a beat, stole 2 more. Marcus took one at a time, methodically, and without looking away from the road. A few minutes later, Lila found a forgotten pouch of fruit chews into the seat pocket and yelped in triumph. "Treasure!" "No open-air fruit chew mining back there," Marcus said automatically. "Too late," Lila said, already chewing. The mist thickened, softening the outline of barns and leafless trees in the distance. Fields spread out beside them in dull greens and watery browns, and every so often a flock of birds lifted off in a trembling black cloud. Adrian, wordlessly, lifted his camera. The quiet click of the shutter was delicate and careful, like he was collecting something rare. He snapped pictures of the blurred treetops, of telephone lines stretching like tight ropes across the fog, of a row of white cows standing in a pasture that looked almost haunted by the weather. "You getting anything good?" Marcus asked. Adrian shrugged, face warm with the kind of pride he didn't want to reveal. "Maybe." "I bet you are," Marcus said, not pushing it further. Elena glanced back and softened. She loved watching her son like this, focused, unguarded, seeing beauty where most people only saw inconvenience. She nudged Marcus gently. "This isn't so bad," she murmured. "No," he admitted, looking at the kids in the rearview mirror. "It's not." Lila had started humming a tune, one with no real pattern, just a string of soft notes. And Adrian, surprisingly, didn't complain. That alone was a miracle of sorts. The tension, that thin film of disappointment and uncertainty, began to crack. Just a little. Just enough to let something warmer slip in. Marcus adjusted the radio and shuffled between stations, landing on a classic rock ballad that Elena immediately vetoed. Then a jazz station Adrian vetoed. Then a pop station Lila insisted was fate sending them good vibes. "Fate can have questionable taste," Adrian said, but he didn't make them change it. Marcus slouched, just slightly, into a posture that was marginally less statue-like, and Elena rewarded him with a proud pat on the arm. Outside, the mist rolled on. Inside, the Callahans, tired, mismatched, but together, settled into the rhythm of the road. The first stretch of highway had begun. Chapter 4. Gas Station Snacks, Car Karaoke. The rain tapered into a fine mist by the time Marcus pulled off the highway. A towering gas station sign, half lit, half blinking, promised fuel, snacks, and hot cocoa inside, with an enthusiasm that felt wildly optimistic for a Tuesday morning. Blueberry rumbled to a stop beside Pump 4. "Stretch break," Elena declared, already unbuckling. "Everyone out before we start growing moss." Lila hopped out first, landing with a dramatic ta-da on the wet pavement. Adrian followed more cautiously, his camera tucked safely under his jacket. Marcus filled the tank while Eleanor ushered the kids toward the convenience store's glowing entrance. The automatic doors whooshed open, releasing a wave of warm air that smelled like cinnamon rolls, fryer oil, and coffee that had probably been sitting out since dawn. It was perfect. Lila gasped. "It's like a treasure cave of sugar." "Remember the rules," Elena warned gently. "Choose wisely." "Wisely is subjective," Adrian said, already reaching for a bag of corn chips. Elena raised an eyebrow. "Try again. Something with at least one actual food group." "Corn is a vegetable," he said, poker-faced. "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that." The Callahans spread out like explorers in a newly discovered land. Marcus inspected the hot drink machine with the seriousness of a man selecting his morning destiny. Elena scanned the candy aisle, weighing the merits of gummy worms versus chocolate-covered pretzels. Lila touched everything, her fingers grazing shiny wrappers, tiny stuffed animals, sparkly pens, and pumpkin spice lip balm. Adrian drifted toward the refrigerated section, photographing a row of neon-colored sodas because they reflected oddly in the glass. 10 minutes later, they reconvened at the register. Their haul included 2 bags of corn chips. Adrian won the debate. Hot cocoa packets for emergencies only. Elena. Gummy worms. Lila insisted they were road trip fuel. A sleeve of peanut butter crackers. Marcus's favourite. A pack of cinnamon mints for Grandma Rita, which no one believed would survive the next 2 hours. When they stepped back into the chilly air, the world felt sharper, brighter. The rain had stopped entirely, leaving the pavement slick and mirror-like. Back in Blueberry, they distributed snacks like a tiny, chaotic rationing committee. "Everyone gets 2 gummy worms at a time," Elena decreed. "We're not losing our minds before we hit the state line." Lila pouted. "But the green ones taste like hope." "Hope gets rationed too," Adrian said, popping one into his mouth. Elena queued up a playlist titled Road Trip Revival, an eclectic mix of 80s hits, early 2000s pop, and whatever Lila had added without permission. The opening notes of a high-energy dance song filled the car. "No," Adrian said immediately. "Absolutely no." "Yes," Lila countered, already wiggling in her seat. "Absolutely yes." Elena glanced back. "1 song. Then we'll rotate choices." Marcus put the car in drive. "Brace yourselves." The beat dropped. Lila belted the lyrics with zero restraint, her voice bouncing everywhere. Off the windows, the ceiling, the seats. She didn't know all the words, but she sang like she'd personally helped write them. Elena joined in next, lightly at first, then louder when she realized no one was judging. Marcus hummed along, trying to keep a straight face as he pretended to focus entirely on the road. Adrian held firm for the first 20 seconds, arms crossed, expression stony. Then Lila nudged him. "Come on," she whispered, "travel magic." He sighed, long, dramatic, teenager heavy. But then, quietly, he mouthed a line or two. And then, because he secretly loved this song, he actually sang. Elena gasped mid-lyric. "Oh my goodness, he's participating." "Don't make it weird," Adrian protested, but he didn't stop singing. Marcus looked at him through the rearview mirror, eyes softening. "You sound good, buddy." "Dad," Adrian groaned, "please stop." But he was smiling, a real one, the kind that reached his eyes. The song ended to a chorus of laughter, Lila clapping, Elena cheering, Marcus knocking the steering wheel in approval. Outside, the grey world zipped past in blurs of wet pavement and the occasional farm silo. Inside, the car had warmed by several degrees, some from body heat, most from joy. Blueberry hummed contentedly down the highway, full of snacks, music, and the first real spark of something new. The Callahans weren't just enduring this road trip, they were beginning to enjoy it. Chapter 5. A detour into Mapletown. 2 hours and several handfuls of snacks later, the landscape shifted. The highway narrowed slightly, the trees grew closer, and the air took on that faint, golden tint that early afternoon sometimes brings, like the world is holding its breath before deciding whether to brighten or dim. Lila pressed her palms to the window. "Look, a sign!" Marcus glanced over. A wooden roadside sign, old enough to have personality, stood crookedly near the shoulder. "Scenic detour, Maplebrook, 3 miles. Homemade maple candies. Local shopping." Elena perked up. "Homemade maple candies? That's basically a siren song." Marcus tapped the steering wheel. "It'll add some time." "We have time," Elena said. "Also, I saw Adrian take approximately 30 fog photos. He owes us something picturesque in actual daylight." "I can get pictures anywhere," Adrian argued, but he was already lifting his camera, intrigued. Lila made the decision for all of them. "It's a sign from the universe," she said firmly. "We have to go." Marcus considered the sign, considered the kids' faces, the unexpected fun simmering in the car, the feeling that their day needed a little brightness. He turned on the blinker. "Maplebrook it is." The detour road wound gently through clusters of trees that still clung to a few stubborn orange and gold leaves. The sun tried to break through the thin clouds, scattering the kind of soft light that made everything look more nostalgic than real. Blueberry hummed her approval. A few minutes later, Maplebrook appeared like something out of a postcard someone's grandmother might tuck into a holiday letter. A cluster of wooden storefronts lined a short main street, each one decorated with leftover fall garlands, tiny pumpkins, and hand-painted signs. A red brick general store sat at the center with a sign that read, Maplebrook General Est, 1938. Maple everything. Subtle, Adrian muttered. I love it, Elena said, already unbuckling. Marcus parked beside a lamppost, wrapped in orange ribbon. When they stepped out, the air smelled faintly of wood smoke and something sweet, like sugar warming in a pot. Lila inhaled dramatically. If happiness had a smell, this would be it. Inside the general store, warmth enveloped them. It was the cozy kind of warm, not stuffy, not artificial, just a gentle wood stove heat mixed with the scent of maple. The store had creaky floors, shelves full of preserves and local crafts, and a counter stacked with glass jars of maple candies in shades from amber to gold. An elderly man with silver hair and kind eyes looked up from behind the counter. His name tag read, Mr. Lowell. Afternoon, he greeted them. You folks passing through? Detour, Marcus said. We got pulled in by your sign. Mister. Lowell chuckled. That old thing's still doing its job, is it? Elena approached the jars of candy, practically glowing. Are these all maple? Every one of them, Mr. Lowell said. My family's recipe. Been making them longer than most folks in town have been alive. Elena picked up a jar labeled Maple Butter Crunch. These are for Grandma Rita, she announced, though her tone suggested they might not survive the evening. Mr. Lowell leaned closer. Tell her she's got good taste. Adrian, meanwhile, wandered the store with his camera, snapping a picture of a shelf of knitted scarves, then a basket of polished stones labelled Take One for Luck, then a display of postcards featuring watercolour paintings of local barns. You're a photographer? Mr. Lowell asked, noticing. Adrian shrugged. Mostly just stuff I see. That's the best kind, the old man said. Folks who look closely see more than the rest of us. Adrian didn't respond, but his ears turned faintly pink. A sure sign of a compliment landing. Lila found a small bag of maple leaf-shaped candies and gasped. Look, they're like little sweet trees. Only buy them if you plan to share, Marcus said. I plan to, Lila replied. Mostly. When they returned to the counter, Mr. Lowell rang everything up carefully, as if each item mattered. Before they left, he tapped a small brochure pinned to a bulletin board. If you've got time, take the ridge road just past town, he said. Leads to a scenic overlook. Views look mighty fine this time of year, especially after rain. Marcus exchanged a glance with Elena. Another detour? She teased. It's Thanksgiving week, he said. We're collecting memories. Lila grinned. See, travel magic. Mr. Lowell smiled at her. Smart kid you've got there. Back in Blueberry, the family unwrapped candies like they were unboxing tiny miracles. Lila sucked on a maple leaf candy so intensely you'd think it contained secrets. Adrian pretended not to like the maple butter crunch, but kept taking small bites. Elena declared the cinnamon maple chews life-changing and hid two in her coat pocket. Marcus drove slowly through Maplebrook, glancing at his family as they chatted and laughed. The cancelled flight felt far away now. The road didn't feel like something they'd been forced onto. It felt like something that was unfolding for them. As they turned onto the winding road toward the ridge, the trees arched overhead like they were welcoming the Callahans into the next chapter of their unexpected adventure. And somewhere behind them, Maplebrook settled back into its quiet charm, leaving the taste of maple lingering in their mouths and the warmth of its welcome lingering in their hearts. Chapter 6. Stories on the Ridge. The road to the overlook wound upward in a loose, looping coil, the kind that made the trees lean in close, as if they were eavesdropping on the Callahan family's conversation. Marcus drove slowly, not out of fear, but because he liked the way the late afternoon light poured over the hood of the rental car like warm honey. "Are we almost there?" Lila asked for the third time, her nose pressed to the window. She watched the leaves swirl behind them in little spirals. "Almost," Marcus said. "Ridge roads aren't meant to be rushed." Adrian, who'd been trying to capture pictures through his window, muttered, "No kidding." But he didn't sound annoyed. If anything, the quiet of the climb seemed to calm him. When they finally reached the top, the world opened up all at once. A wide, curved overlook stretched out before them, bordered by a low stone wall. Below it sat a valley brushed with gold and rust, oak, maple, sycamore trees, all holding on to the last colors of fall. The sky above was pale blue, already fading toward evening. "Whoa," Adrian breathed. He lifted his camera slowly, reverently, like someone holding a fragile thing. Lila hopped out and ran to the stone wall. "Look, it's like we're on top of the world." Eleanor chuckled as she stepped out. "Well, a very small world, a cozy one." Marcus leaned against the wall, hands in his jacket pockets, staring out at the view with a soft expression. After a long moment, he said, "My dad used to bring me here." The kids turned toward him. Marcus didn't talk about his father very often, not because he was hiding something, but because he tended to hold memories close, turning them over privately like worn coins. "He'd take me up this road every Thanksgiving weekend," Marcus continued, "usually early in the morning, before the sun was really up." "What for?" Lila asked. "To watch the fog lift," Marcus said. He said it felt like watching the world wake up. Elena moved closer and slipped her hand into his, a silent encouragement. Marcus smiled faintly. "One time it was freezing, really freezing, frost everywhere. I must have been about Adrian's age. I kept complaining my gloves were too thin, my boots were too small, the air hurt my face." "That sounds like you," Adrian said, smirking. Marcus shot him a look that was only half stern. "Anyway, your grandpa just laughed and said, 'Someday you'll be glad you came.'" I didn't believe him. He gestured at the valley. But he was right. This place stuck with me. The wind picked up, brushing their jackets, carrying that faint late autumn scent. Cold earth, old leaves, something like memory itself. "What happened after?" Adrian asked, quieter than before. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "We'd sit on the hood of the car and talk. Mostly him talking, me pretending not to care. He'd tell stories about being a kid, how his own parents used to pile everyone into a truck and drive to his grandmother's house for Thanksgiving. The roads were different back then, less paved, fewer guardrails. He always said the ride was half the holiday." Adrian lowered his camera. "I didn't know that." Yeah," Marcus murmured. "I guess I haven't told you much." Lila leaned against him, hugging his arm. "Tell us more. Was Grandpa funny?" Marcus's face softened, his eyes warming in that distant way they did whenever he spoke about something long gone. He thought he was, but yes, he had his moments. Once he tried to cook the Thanksgiving turkey himself. Forgot to take out the bag of giblets first. "Gross," Adrian said. "Super gross," Lila agreed, delighted. Elena laughed. "Your grandma Rita told me that story once. Said the house smelled like burnt bird tragedy." They all laughed, easy, loose laughter that made the chilly air feel warmer. Marcus went on, sharing small, imperfect memories. Falling asleep in the back seat with his sister snoring beside him. The year the radiator burst and everyone ended up eating mashed potatoes in a mechanic's waiting room. The time his dad got lost and pretended it was the scenic route for 2 straight hours. Stories simple and human, stitched together by warmth rather than perfection. Adrian listened quietly, his camera forgotten in his lap. It surprised him hearing his father talk this way, openly, with a kind of soft nostalgia Adrian didn't associate with him. He'd always seen Marcus as practical, grounded, rarely sentimental. But here, on this ridge, illuminated by fading daylight, he seemed lighter, more real somehow. And Adrian felt something shift gently inside him, a recalibration, a softening. Maybe dads weren't meant to be understood all at once. Maybe they were more like road trips. You got to know them in stretches, in good lighting, in the quiet between places. When the sun finally dipped low enough to turn the valley copper, Elena clapped her hands. "All right, team, back to the car. I think I heard everyone's stomach rumbling." "Except mine," Lila insisted, then paused. "Okay, maybe mine a little." As they walked back, Marcus glanced at his kids. Adrian, with his camera swinging at his side, Lila kicking leaves like confetti, and he felt a deep, settling gratitude. Maybe his dad had been right. Maybe the ride was half the holiday. And maybe, just maybe, he was giving his own kids a gift he didn't even realize he'd inherited. Chapter 7. The Small Town Diner. By the time they wound back down to the ridge road, the last glow of daylight had thinned into a dusky smear behind the hills. Hunger arrived all at once, sharp, undeniable, unanimous. Even Adrian, who usually pretended food was optional whenever he was in a mood, admitted, "Okay, I could eat." So when a flickering neon sign appeared on the roadside, a fork and knife glowing in uneven pulses, Marcus flicked on the blinker without hesitation. "The Fireside Grill," the sign announced cheerfully, even though one of the S's was burnt out and made it read more like Fire ED. "Cozy," Elena said approvingly, "and maybe a little haunted." "Perfect." Lila pressed her hands to the window. "Look, the windows are all steamed up like it's baking warm inside." The diner sat slightly crooked on its foundation, as though it had been nudged by the wind one too many times. Inside, golden light pooled across vinyl booths and a long counter lined with red stools. The windows were fogged exactly as Lila predicted, each one catching reflections of people in fleece jackets chatting over early dinners. A bell jingled warmly as they entered. "Grab any booth you like," called a waitress with silver-streaked hair pulled into a bun and a cranberry red apron tied snug around her waist. Her name tag read DEAB in cheerful block letters. They slid into a booth near the window, where a small lamp cast a soft halo across the table. The entire restaurant smelled like butter, soup broth, and something sweet in the oven, maybe pie. Definitely pie. Deb arrived at their table with menus. "Y'all traveling for the holiday?" "Yes," Elena said. "Long day, longer road ahead." "Well, you came to the right place. Eat something warm and take a breath. Road'll still be there when you're done." She winked, then surveyed the kids with the authoritative squint of someone who'd raised at least 4 of her own. "Let me guess. Pancakes for him?" Adrian blinked, caught off guard. Yeah?" "You've got pancake energy," she said simply, scribbling. Lila pointed to the soup. "And can I get the chicken noodle with extra noodles, please? Lots of them?" "Sweetie, I'll make sure the noodles are practically overflowing." Marcus ordered chili and cornbread. Elena chose a turkey melt that made Deb nod approvingly. When she left, the table seemed to relax all at once, as though the warmth of the diner had finally seeped under their skin. The world outside felt far away, shrunk down to streaks of rain on the windows and headlights passing like wandering fireflies. "You know," Elena said, folding her hands around the warm mug of tea Deb had placed in front of her, "this feels like a pause button." "Yeah," Adrian agreed, surprising them. "In a good way." Marcus stretched his arm along the back of the booth, looking content for the first time all day. Sometimes that's all a diner is supposed to be, a place between places. Lila was busy admiring the laminated menu, which had little illustrations of pies and milkshakes along the edges. "Mom, can we come here every road trip forever?" "We'll try," Elena said, "though I think half the fun is finding new places we don't expect." Their food arrived steaming. Marcus's chili came in a heavy ceramic bowl, fragrant with spices, the cornbread beside it perfectly golden. Elena's turkey melt was all gooey cheese and crisp edges, just the way she loved it. Adrian's pancakes were stacked absurdly high, 5 layers dusted with powdered sugar, almost architectural. His eyes widened. Okay, respect. And Lila's soup. Well, the noodles were plentiful enough that Deb declared it more noodle than soup, which delighted her. Conversation flowed in that easy, unhurried way that only happens in warm places after long days. They talked about the ridge overlook, about Grandpa Callahan and the fog memories Marcus had shared, about which gas station snack had been the worst, corn chips, unanimously, and what Grandma Rita might be cooking tomorrow. At one point, Adrian snapped a photo, not of the view, not of anything extraordinary, but of the table itself. Hands reaching for food, a smear of syrup. Lila laughing mid-sentence. Marcus leaning back with chili in hand. Elena sipping her tea with soft eyes. He didn't say why he took it. He didn't need to. When the plates were finally empty and the last crumbs gathered, Deb brought a slice of warm apple pie on the house. Holiday travellers get special treatment. The family shared it, bites passed back and forth, each claiming their forkful was the best one. As they bundled up again to leave, the bell over the door chimed gently behind them. The diner's warmth followed them out into the cool evening air, lingering like the last note of a song. For a moment, none of them said anything. Then Lila sighed happily. That was perfect. Marcus agreed quietly. Yeah, it was. And before the road swallowed them up again, Elena glanced back at the glowing windows, the fogged glass, the golden light, the silhouettes moving inside, like a little world suspended in time. A pause button they hadn't even known they needed. Chapter 8. The Night Drive. By the time they climbed back into Blueberry, the sky had surrendered fully to night. Not the sharp, star-pricked kind. This was a soft, velvety darkness, thick with clouds and the faintest shimmer of mist drifting across the road. Marcus switched on the headlights. 2 bright tunnels of gold cut forward through the black, illuminating swirling pockets of fog. The world outside the glass shrank to that narrow ribbon of road and the faint silhouettes of pines standing like quiet sentinels on either side. Inside the car, everything softened. Lila curled under her fleece blanket, her head pillowed on Elena's coat. Adrian slouched against the window, camera tucked safely in his hoodie pocket, eyes half lidded as though caught between waking and dreaming. The heater hummed low, and the leftover warmth from the diner followed them like a cozy echo. "Seatbelts on?" Marcus asked gently, though he could already see them buckled. "Yes, Dad," Adrian murmured. "Double yes," came Lila's sleepy voice. Marcus smiled and eased the car back onto the road. The music played quietly. Elena's doing. She tapped through to the softer songs, the ones with gentle acoustics and lyrics no one needed to sing along to. Songs built for night drives, meant for thoughts that only surface when the world goes dim. For a long while, no one spoke. The trees blurred past, like shadows moving through deeper shadows. The road wound through patches of open field and then back into the shelter of forest, each turn revealing a new kind of darkness. Elena watched the 2 kids in the rearview mirror, her expression softening. "They're getting so big," she whispered. Marcus kept his eyes on the road, but he nodded. "I was thinking that too. Feels like yesterday Adrian couldn't say the word pumpkin without calling it a pumpkin." Marcus's laugh was quiet. He used to call cornbread corner bread because he thought it was shaped that way for a reason. "And Lila?" Eleanor looked at the little bundle in the back seat, blanket tucked up to her chin. "She won't be little for much longer." "She'll always be little to us," Marcus said, "but yeah, it goes fast." Outside, a low layer of mist drifted across to the asphalt. Blueberry's headlights sliced through it like slow-moving fireworks. Adrian opened his eyes just long enough to see the dazzling effect, the fog swirling and scattering light like tiny galaxies. He didn't say a word, but he smiled to himself. The trees thinned as they drove, replaced by small clusters of houses. Porch lights glowing amber, wreaths on doors, a few inflatable snowmen stubbornly glowing despite the wind. The kind of neighbourhoods that looked like they were tucked in for the night, dreaming their own quiet dreams. Lila stirred. "Where are we now?" "Still on the way," Elena whispered. "Feels like we're floating," Lila murmured, already half asleep again. After another stretch of silence, Marcus spoke, voice low so as not to wake the kids. "You know, earlier on the ridge, when I told them those stories, I forgot how much of my childhood sits in moments like that. Small things, quiet places," he paused. "My dad used to point out the constellations whenever we drove at night. Said the world was always bigger than whatever problem we had." Elena reached over, her hand resting on his arm. "I think the kids will remember tonight," she said. "Not because anything dramatic happened, but because it's us, all together, in a quiet moment." Marcus swallowed. "I hope so." "No," Elena corrected gently. "They will." Blueberry hummed along the dark road, tires gliding in a steady rhythm. The heater whispered. The soft music drifted in and out like a lullaby. The world had narrowed to just them, 5 seats, warm air, soft light, and a ribbon of road leading toward Grandma Rita's house. It felt suspended in time, precious in a way that only revealed it to itself when everything else fell away. By the time they approached the next turnoff, Lila was fully asleep, and Adrian drifted again, between dreams. Elena rested her head lightly against the window. Marcus's eyes stayed steady, calm, grateful. They drove on. Together. Wrapped in darkness, headlights, and the quiet certainty that even a long day could end in peace. Chapter 9: A Motel with Holiday Lights. The longer they drove, the more the night settled into their bones, soft, quiet, and heavy, with the kind of tired that made even Adrian begin searching the roadside for signs of a place to stop. Elena spotted it first, a glow on the horizon, warm and inviting, like a village from a snow globe. As Blueberry drew closer, the shapes sharpened into a small, family-run motel with a narrow row of rooms and a big wooden sign that read, "Dunley's Rest Vacancy." But what made the Callahans collectively exhale was the lights. Dozens of strings of holiday bulbs hung across the roofline, draped around the office door, circled the railing of the little outdoor walkway. They were charmingly crooked, some sagging where a hook had slipped, others wrapped unevenly around posts, as if done by someone more enthusiastic than as skilled. "Look," Lila whispered, suddenly awake. "It's like it's smiling." Marcus chuckled. "That's exactly what it looks like." He parked, and they stepped into the chilly night air. The bulbs gave everything a soft, warm halo, reflecting in puddles on the pavement like tiny, shimmering constellations. Inside the small motel office, a bell jingled as they entered. A woman in her late 60s, with silver hair clipped back and a sweater covered in embroidered holly leaves, looked up with delight. "Well, hello, travellers," she said, voice warm as a pot of cider. "I'm Mrs. Dunley. You folks look like you could use a warm room and about 12 hours of sleep." Elena laughed. 12 sounds perfect." Mrs. Dunley leaned over the counter, peering at the kids. "And I bet you two need extra blankets. It'll be cold tonight. Storm blew through earlier." She rummaged under the desk and produced 2 thick, soft quilts folded neatly. "These should help." The quilts were mismatched but beautiful, one covered in tiny blue flowers, the other in patchwork reds and golds. Lila hugged hers immediately. "Thank you," she said, muffled into the fabric. Mrs. Dunley gave a grandmotherly nod. "You're very welcome, sweetheart." Room 7 was at the far end of the building, under a strand of lights that flickered in a friendly, uneven rhythm. Marcus unlocked the door and a rush of slightly stale but comforting warm air drifted out. The room had 2 full beds, a fuzzy old TV, a small round table, and a window looking out at the glowing walkway. It wasn't luxurious, but it felt safe, like a rest stop crafted just for weary families. Adrian threw his backpack onto the bed closest to the window. "This place is kinda great." Elena grinned. "See? Unexpected magic." They changed into pajamas, the kids claiming their usual sides, and Elena heated up the microwave popcorn using the tiny machine wedged between the mini fridge and the wall. When the first buttery pops echoed, Lila lifted her head like a meerkat. "It smells like the movies at home." Marcus flipped through the TV channels until he found a holiday movie playing. One of those classic ones with too many plot lines and a dog that somehow saves Christmas. "Perfect," Elena declared. They all settled under their blankets on the beds, the quilts Mrs. Dunley had given them draped over their legs. The popcorn sat in a big plastic bowl in the middle. Even Adrian didn't complain when Lila hogged most of the pillow real estate. The movie flickered in that fuzzy way old televisions do, warm, imperfect, somehow better for all its static and colour bleed. The lights outside the window blinked unevenly, casting gentle patches of colour across the far wall, red, green, yellow, blue, repeating like a heartbeat. Lila lasted 20 minutes. She curled sideways, then upside down, then diagonally, until eventually she ended up sprawled across both beds, head on Marcus's knee, feet on Adrian's stomach, stealing half the quilt. Adrian didn't push her away. He just sighed, pulled the quilt back up over her, and kept watching the screen, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Out like a light," Marcus murmured. "Like a Christmas bulb," Elena added. Adrian snorted softly. Outside, a soft wind blew past the walkway, rattling the lights just enough to make them quiver like stars. Inside, the Callahans sat close, wrapped in a warmth that didn't come from the heating unit humming under the window. It came from being together, from being safe, from being exactly where they needed to end the night. By the time the movie rolled into its overly cheerful finale, all 4 of them were nodding off, the bowl of popcorn half finished on the table. Marcus clicked off the TV. They settled in. The holiday lights outside blinked gently through the curtains, keeping watch as the Callahans drifted into dreams, soft ones, full of winding roads and the promise of morning. Chapter 10. Morning cinnamon rolls Polaroids. Morning arrived slowly, like it wasn't quite sure it wanted to wake up yet. A pale blue glow seeped through the motel curtains first, turning the room into a soft watercolor. The air was still chilly, the kind that makes everyone burrow deeper under the blankets before they decide whether the world is worth rejoining. Lila was the first to stir. She blinked awake, disoriented but happy, still tangled in Marcus's quilt and half draped across Adrian's legs. "Is it morning?" she whispered. "Barely," Elena mumbled from the other bed, voice gravelly with sleep. "But there might be cinnamon rolls in the lobby." Lila sat bolt upright. "Cinnamon rolls?" Adrian groaned. "That's unfair motivation at this hour." But he was already sitting up too. Marcus stretched, joints popping in a symphony of middle-aged truth. "Come on, troops. Let's get dressed before all the good ones are gone." The motel lobby was small, just a front desk, a bulletin board full of community flyers, and a little table near the window. But the table held exactly what Elena predicted. A tray of complimentary cinnamon rolls, soft, spiraled, and still warm from the motel's old oven. A giant thermos labeled hot chocolate sat beside a basket of styrofoam cups. Next to that, a bowl of apples, a stack of paper napkins, and a handwritten sign that read, "Help yourself, sweet friends, Mrs. Dunley." "Sweet friends," Lila whispered, delighted. "We're sweet friends." Adrian grinned as he poured himself hot chocolate. The mixture was thin and watery, but somehow perfect for the moment. He took a sip. Okay, actually good. Told you, Elena said, already grabbing the biggest cinnamon roll she could find. Marcus held out napkins to the kids. Careful, these things are sticky. Lila already had icing on her cheek. The lobby window looked out over the parking lot, where frost clung to the grass and the windshields of the few parked cars. The holiday lights were still on. Someone must have forgotten to switch them off, and their soft, sleepy glow made the entire scene feel like morning in a half-dream. And that's when Adrian reached into his hoodie pocket. "Hey, Lila," he said, "can I borrow your instant camera?" Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Yeah." He shrugged casually as if it wasn't a big deal. "I kind of want to get this." She handed it over like she was passing him a priceless treasure, which, to her, it was. Adrian stepped outside, breath puffing in the cold air. He framed the shot. The motel, the crooked lights, still blinking bravely against the morning, frost dusting the grass, the sky a soft watercolor wash. He snapped one photo, then another. The little square photos slid out, humming faintly as their images slowly began to appear, shadowy at first, then blooming into color. He held them gently by the edges, watching as the motel emerged, crisp and imperfectly beautiful. Inside, Lila pressed her face against the glass to watch him. "He's being sentimental again," she whispered to Elena. "Let him," Elena said softly. "He's learning how to keep memories." Marcus joined them at the window. "He gets that from you, you know." Elena Callahan. "Hoarder of moments," she joked, tapping her chest proudly. "Collector," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference." When Adrian came back inside, cheeks pink from the cold, he handed one of the photos to Lila. "For your sticker book," he said. "We should remember this place." Lila held the photo against her chest. "I love it." Adrian kept the other one, tucking it carefully into his backpack, right between the notebook he never wrote in and the extra camera batteries. They finished their cinnamon rolls slowly, savoring each bite, the icing sticky on their fingers. A couple of other travelers wandered into the lobby, an older couple in matching puffy jackets and a truck driver rubbing sleep out of his eyes. Everyone greeted each other with nods that said, "Yes, we survived the night. Yes, the cinnamon rolls are excellent." Mrs. Dunley appeared from the back room, smiling wide. "Did you all sleep well?" "Best sleep of the trip so far," Marcus said. "Good," she said, patting his arm. "The road is a friendlier place when you start the day rested." Before they left, she pressed 2 more quilts into Eleanor's arms. "For the rest of your journey," she said simply. Elena tried to protest, but Mrs. Dunley shushed her with a wave of her hand. "It's Thanksgiving week. Let people give you things." Back in Blueberry, the heater humming to life, the new quilts tucked warmly across laps, the Callahans sat for a moment without starting the engine. The morning light touched the frost. The crooked lights blinked one last time behind them. And Adrian, quiet, thoughtful Adrian, looked down at the instant photo in his hand. He didn't joke. He didn't roll his eyes. He just smiled. Because somewhere between gas station karaoke and holiday motel lights, he'd realized he was enjoying this trip far more than he would ever admit out loud. Marcus started the car. "Next stop," he said, "the last stretch." And with bellies warm from cinnamon rolls and hearts warm from something else entirely, they pulled back onto the road. Chapter 11. The Last Stretch. The highway they'd been following all morning thinned into 2 lanes, then 1, and finally into a winding road that curved between rolling hills. Outside the windows, the landscape softened, broad fields gone winter gold, ponds with skim ice holding the shape of last night's cold, and barns painted a weathered, loyal red. It all felt like a slow exhale after too many hours of travel. Lila pressed her forehead to the glass. Everything looks like a postcard, she whispered, fogging up a small circle she then doodled a heart into. Elena twisted around from the front seat. That's because we're officially entering Grandma Rita territory. The air smells like cinnamon starting around here. It does not, Adrian muttered, but even he cracked the smallest smile. His camera rested in his lap, the old strap worn from years of use, ready for any unexpected beauty. Marcus tapped the steering wheel, energized by the approach of home. "All right," he announced. "Very important question. What Thanksgiving dish is everyone looking forward to most? I need the data. It's crucial." Lila didn't hesitate. "Grandma's sweet potatoes with the marshmallows toasted on top, the ones that look like snowy mountains." "Green bean casserole," Elena said. "The crunchy onions are the best part." Adrian shrugged. "Honestly, her rolls. They're like actual clouds, like the kind people write poems about." He paused, embarrassed by his own sincerity. "But don't quote me." Marcus nodded sagely. "Valid choices, all of them. Personally, I'll be pursuing the perfect gravy-to-potato ratio this year." Elena groaned. "Here we go." "It's an art," Marcus insisted, lifting one hand off the wheel to emphasize his point. "Too much gravy and the potatoes surrender. Too little and the whole plate suffers. Balance is key. Harmony. Culinary feng shui." "If you say feng shui again, I'm getting out of the car," Adrian said dryly. They were still laughing when the GPS chirped with a sudden and unhelpful recalculating. Marcus frowned. "That can't be right." The road forked, and without much warning, he took the left path. 10 minutes later, the landscape looked unfamiliar. More trees, fewer farms, the shadows of the branches weaving like lace over the hood. "We're lost," Lila declared happily. "We are not lost," Marcus replied, though he was squinting at the map on his phone, as if it had personally betrayed him. But then they rounded a bend, and the annoyance settled into silence. An old dirt road stretched ahead, framed on both sides by enormous oaks, ancient, towering sentinels draped with the last of their golden leaves. The sunlight angled just right, creating a tunnel of warm light and gentle shadows. It felt like a place that didn't quite belong to the modern world. Adrian raised his camera without a word. Click. Another memory captured. Elena's voice softened. "Well, maybe being not lost isn't so bad." As they continued along the oak-lined road, no one spoke. They didn't need to. There was a sense, quiet but certain, that this moment, like so many on this unexpected trip, would cling to them long after Thanksgiving ended. Lila finally broke the silence. "I think this is a sign from the universe." "What kind of sign?" Adrian asked. "The kind that says we're supposed to slow down sometimes," she answered simply. And somehow, it didn't sound silly at all. The road eventually opened back onto the familiar route toward Grandma Rita's, but none of them forgot that little detour. It became one more piece of the journey they didn't know they needed, tucked away like a warm secret in their hearts as they drove on toward the porch light waiting for them. Chapter 12. Arrival at Grandma Rita's. The sun slipped away long before they reached the final stretch of winding country roads. Night had come quietly, first dimming the colors of the hills, then polishing the sky into a deep indigo scattered with stars. The cold edged in, as Blueberry the rental car hummed along the dark tree-lined lanes, its headlights carving out a narrow glowing tunnel they traveled through like a small, determined ship. Inside the car, the family had grown quieter. Not tired exactly, but settled. Worn in that particular way that comes after many hours of travel, the comfortable kind of tired that comes from shared stories, shared snacks, and shared road. The hum of the tires acted like a blanket, folding over them. Lila was the only one still wide-eyed, as if she had saved a reserve of excitement just for this moment. She kept her face near the window, watching for the first familiar sign of Grandma Rita's neighborhood. I swear I'll see her porch light any minute, she whispered, as though the light itself might hear her and brighten. Elena smiled, rubbing Lila's shoulder. We're close, sweetheart. Another few minutes. Marcus leaned forward, peering through the windshield as if sheer determination could make the house appear faster. He cleared his throat softly, the sort of sound people make when emotion catches unexpectedly. Feels different coming in late, he said, like we're sneaking into the holiday. Adrian, half slouched in the back seat, tapped his camera against his knee. Well, we're fashionably late, he said, trying for humor but sounding more gentle than sarcastic. Thanksgiving Eve, fashionably late. Elena looked back at him, noting the softness. A new tradition, she offered. Adrian shrugged, but he didn't deny it. The GPS chimed one final time, announcing their last turn with a muted, almost reverent tone. Blueberry pulled onto a narrower road, one Marcus knew by heart even without the map's help. The pavement shifted to gravel for a few stretches, crunching beneath the tires in a familiar rumble that meant home was only seconds away. There, Lila burst out, pointing ahead. And she was right. A small two-story farmhouse sat at the end of the lane, sleepy and warm against the shadows, its porch light shining steadily through the dark. It wasn't bright or flashy, just a soft, constant glow, like the beam of a lighthouse designed for one family alone. Marcus exhaled without realizing he had been holding his breath. Elena reached out and took his hand. She kept the light on. She always does, he murmured. Blueberry rolled to a stop in the gravel driveway. The engine clicked as Marcus switched it off, and for a moment, everything was still. The quiet kind of silence that belongs only to the countryside, where even the wind seems to hush itself. Then the front door opened. Grandma Rita stepped onto the porch, though she'd sensed their arrival not by the sound of the engine, but by some grandmotherly instinct. She wore a long knitted cardigan, sage green, the same one she'd worn for years, with sleeves slightly too long and a row of mismatched buttons she'd replaced over time. Her silver hair was pulled back, wisps escaping around her face, and the warm yellow light behind her haloed her like a painting. Oh, she breathed, hand clutching her chest the way she always did when overwhelmed by joy. My travelers. My sweet travelers. Lila was out of the car first, her door slamming shut behind her as she sprinted up the steps and straight into her grandmother's arms. Rita let out a soft oof, but wrapped her tightly, laughing. I helped navigate, Lila announced proudly, though they all knew she had mostly pointed at interesting-shaped trees. I'm sure you did, Rita said, pressing a kiss into her hair. Elena got out next, stretching her stiff shoulders, then walked up the porch steps to join the hug. We made it, she said, and there was relief in her voice. Gentle relief, the kind that warms the rib cage. I never doubted you, Rita replied, but her eyes shimmered with tenderness. Come here. She pulled Elena close, holding her in the kind of embrace that lingers half a second longer than expected, the exact length needed to convey a year's worth of unspoken affection. Marcus lingered by the car for a moment, watching. He felt the cool air on his face, smelled pine and faint smoke from a nearby chimney, heard the creaking of the old porch boards under his family's feet. It struck him suddenly how profoundly grateful he was that they had made it through storms, delays, and detours to this doorstep. Maybe it was dramatic, but something about the sight of his mother illuminated by the porch light pierced him unexpectedly. Marcus Callahan, Rita called softly, breaking him from his thoughts. Are you going to stand out there all night or come give your mother a proper hello? He laughed, his throat a bit tight. I'm coming. When he stepped onto the porch, she reached out both hands and held his face like she still saw the boy he had been. There you are, she whispered. Here I am, he answered. They hugged, and for a moment Marcus closed his eyes. Her cardigan smelled like rosemary and something sweet, apples maybe, or baked pears. It was the smell of every holiday he could remember. Adrian joined the last, walking up the steps slowly. "Hey, Grandma," he said, voice soft. Rita turned to him, her smile widening. "Adrian, my young artist." He muttered, cheeks warming. "Yeah." She enveloped him in a hug anyway. "You grew again," she said. "Maybe like half an inch. To me, that's still growth." He returned the hug just a little. When they pulled apart, he lifted his camera. "Wait, don't move." "Grandma," Rita looked puzzled, but she obeyed. "Hey!" Adrian snapped a photo without fuss, without announcing it in grand artistic fashion. He simply saw something he didn't want to forget. A soft light behind her cardigan sleeves hanging past her hands, her smile still holding the memory of her children and grandchildren arriving safely at her door. He looked at the screen and smiled. "That one's my favorite," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. Rita beamed, though she tried to pretend she didn't hear. "Come inside," she said, ushering them toward the warm doorway. "It's cold tonight, and I have something on the stove that's been waiting for you." "What is it?" Lila asked, bouncing on her toes. "Just a little something," Rita said, her eyes twinkling. "You'll see." The house welcomed them like an old friend. It was warm and golden, filled with the scent of rosemary, roasted apples, and something buttery that made all four travelers sigh at once. Coats were shrugged off, shoes kicked aside, bags left by the door in a tired pile. The kitchen was the warmest room in the house. A small lamp glowed in the corner, illuminating the wooden cabinets Marcus had helped stain when he was 14. The old enamel stove hummed quietly, and from the pot on the front burner came the smell of simmering broth, herbs, and vegetables. "I thought you might be hungry," Rita said, stirring gently with a wooden spoon worn smooth from years of use. "So I made a little stew and some biscuits." "It smells amazing," Eleanor said, her voice expressing something deeper than hunger. "Like home," Marcus said. Lila climbed onto her usual stool, feet not quite touching the ground. "Can we eat now?" Rita chuckled. "Of course. Traveling works up an appetite." She ladled warm bowls of stew, golden broth, tender carrots, potatoes, bits of shredded chicken, and passed them around. She pulled a tray of biscuits from the oven, steam rising into the cozy kitchen air. Adrian took a photo of the biscuits before anyone touched them, then another of the stew bowls lined up on the counter. "Just documenting," he said sheepishly. "We appreciate the record keeping," Elena teased. They gathered around the small kitchen table, elbows brushing, bowls warming their hands. The first bites were met with soft moans of delight. No one tried to pretend they were polite about it. "Oh, wow," Marcus said with his mouth full. "Language," Elena laughed, nudging him. Lila dunked an entire biscuit into her stew, letting it soak until it nearly fell apart. "Grandma, I think this is magic." "Well," Rita replied, "I did stir in a little extra love tonight." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Is that one of your secret ingredients?" "One of them," she said. "The other is butter. A lot of it." They all laughed, and something inside the room, a tension none of them had acknowledged, finally melted. After dinner, they lingered at the table longer than necessary. Elena told Rita about the cancelled flight. Marcus described the diner, the storm, and Blueberry, the rental car's noble performance. Lila reenacted her heroic navigation, using a biscuit as a pointer. Adrian showed Rita a few photos on his camera. She looked at each one slowly, carefully, as if they were treasures. When she reached the photo, he took on the porch. She touched the screen lightly. "Oh," she whispered, eyes softening, "you caught the light just right." "It wasn't me," Adrian said. "It was everything." She patted his hand. "You have a good idea." By the time the bowls were empty and the kitchen smelled like warm dishes and cooling biscuits, the tiredness they'd been holding back finally caught up to them. Elena yawned, Marcus stretched his stiff back, and Lila sagged sideways in her chair. "Oh my," Rita said. "Look at you all. You need sleep. Your rooms are ready. Fresh sheets, extra quilts, and I sprinkled a little cinnamon on the pillows. Marcus blinked. You sprinkled cinnamon on the pillows? It makes the dream sweeter, she said, as though this were obvious. No one questioned her. They carried their bags upstairs. The hallway creaked in the same familiar places. The bedrooms smelled faintly of lavender sachets and old hardwood floors. Lila dove immediately onto a bed, clutching the quilt to her chest. Adrian placed his camera on the dresser gently, reverently. Elena kissed both kids goodnight. Then Marcus joined her in their room, dropping into the old wooden rocking chair with a dramatic sigh. He looked at her. We made it. We did, she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. One very long, very strange, very perfect detour. He wrapped an arm around her, rocking slowly. Downstairs, they could hear Rita washing the last dishes, humming a soft tune that drifted up through the warm air. The house settled. The night wrapped itself around the walls, and one by one, the travellers drifted into sleep, each of them dreaming with just a hint of cinnamon in the air. Soon, morning would come with laughter and relatives and the chaos of a holiday. But for tonight, they had arrived. Safe, warm, seen, and held. And that was enough. Chapter 13. The Thanksgiving Table. Morning rose over Grandma Rita's house with the kind of soft light that felt like it had been waiting behind the horizon for permission to step inside. The first rays filtered through lace curtains and drifted across creaky floorboards, landing gently on the backs of chairs, the edges of picture frames, the bowls and plates waiting to be filled. The house itself seemed to wake slowly, stretching its old bones in a familiar rhythm that came naturally after decades of hosting holidays. For a long moment, everything was quiet. Then the house filled, first with footsteps, then with voices, then with the unmistakable hum of family gathering. It started with a knock that wasn't really a knock but more of a courtesy tap before the door swung open. It was Aunt Denise, brisk and bright as always, arms full of grocery bags, even though everyone insisted she didn't need to bring anything. Following her was Uncle Henry, carrying a dessert that appeared to have survived exactly one pothole too many. Then came Cousin Mark with his booming laugh, and Cousin Tara, and then a trickle of more relatives in the way large families often arrive. Not in neat order, not in silence, but in clusters of greetings, hugs, and half-formed conversations that start before coats are even off. Within an hour, Grandma Rita's small house felt like a living thing, breathing, bustling, warm. And in the middle of it all, the Callahans moved like people who were both part of the chaos and still quietly adjusting to being off the road. There was a softness to their movements, a lingering sense of having come from somewhere far and quiet. They had spent days in tighter quarters, speaking in calmer voices, absorbing small wonders, tiny towns and crooked lights, and ridge-top storytelling. The shift to a crowded house was like stepping from a hushed song into a full orchestra. But it wasn't jarring, it was comforting. Like the world saying, "You're home now." The relatives want the story. The story of their road trip began spilling out almost immediately. It started when Aunt Denise noticed Blueberry parked outside and said, "That's not your usual car, Marcus. When did you get an SUV the colour of an April sky?" And from there, it all unravelled, in the best way. Marcus launched into the tale with Elena chiming in from across the kitchen, hands deep in a bowl of seasoning for the stuffing. Lila added sound effects from the table where she was sorting through Grandma Rita's tin of old stickers, and Adrian, pretending not to care, leaned against the counter, but quietly corrected the small details whenever someone got them wrong. "Wait, no, Dad, that was after the pretzels spilled," he muttered once, which led to three aunts turning toward him with delighted attention. "Oh, there were pretzels?" Aunt Denise asked. "Of course there were pretzels," Marcus said, as though this were a universally understood truth. "There are always pretzels." Elena wiped her hands on a dish towel and added, "But the real moment, the moment the trip changed, was the gas station. Lila picked out 3 different kinds of gummy worms because she said each colour had a different personality. "They do," Lila said without looking up. "The blue ones are loyal." Cousin Mark laughed. "Loyal worms, good to know." "And then," Elena continued, "we sang. Well, Lila and I sang. Marcus attempted bass harmonies, and Adrian—" "Do not," Adrian warned, cheeks warming in betrayal of his calm posture. But it was too late. Elena was smiling in that way that said she planned to share something tender. "He sang too," she finished softly. A few relatives awed, and Adrian covered his face with his sleeve but didn't deny it. It was the kind of simple, embarrassing moment that families adored because it meant you were letting them in. Next came the part about Maplebrook. "Picture this little town," Marcus said, hands gesturing to help conjure the image in the air. "Wooden storefronts. A general store that still sells maple candy from jars. The friendliest old shopkeeper, and this tiny scenic overlook he recommended that, honestly, felt like stepping into a painting." "Oh, it was more than a painting," Elena said, her voice going soft. "The leaves there were still holding on. Bright gold, like sunlight was caught in them." "And Dad told stories," Adrian said quietly, surprising everyone, including himself, about when he was a kid, about driving to Grandma's for Thanksgiving back when the roads still felt endless. Marcus met his son's eyes for just a moment. There was warmth there, shared recognition maybe, a growing closeness that both of them were still adjusting to, careful with, but grateful for. The relatives listened, smiled, shook their heads at the mishaps, and laughed in all the right places. No one interrupted the good parts. Because family, real family, knows how to listen to stories that matter. The kitchen becomes command central. By late morning, the kitchen was officially a battlefield. Flour dusted the counter like fresh fallen snow. The oven door opened and closed so often that it might as well have been rehearsing for a theatrical production. Someone's timer kept going off. Someone else was always asking where the good spatula went. Bowls multiplied. Pans appeared out of nowhere. There were at least 3 simultaneous conversations happening at any given time. Through it all, Grandma Rita moved with absolute calm. She was the center of the storm, unshaken, steady, humming under her breath as though the chaos was simply a lively accompaniment to her melody. Her kitchen didn't intimidate her. It was an extension of her hands, her heart, her memory. She taught Cousin Tara how to fold dumpling edges the proper way, took the biscuits out at exactly the right moment without ever checking a clock, and managed to somehow keep an entire mental list of which dish needed to go in next. Elena was her closest shadow, helping where she could, matching her rhythm, laughing whenever something spilled and insisting it was all part of the holiday charm. Marcus attempted to wash dishes as fast as they appeared, but new ones materialized from thin air, defeating him at every turn. Lila helped too, sort of. She buttered rolls with the intensity of a surgeon, set napkins on the table with dramatic flair, and continuously wandered off to tell relatives about the motel cat named Whisper, who was actually just a stray but who definitely loved her. And Adrian? Adrian took pictures. Not of people posing or standing stiffly, but of moments, hands passing each other bowls, flour on someone's elbow, sunlight hitting the side of a mixing spoon, Grandma Rita laughing with her head tilted back just slightly, like she had her whole heart in the moment. He wasn't trying to document the day. He was trying to remember it. And maybe trying to make sure everyone else remembered too. A quiet moment before the meal. Despite the noise, the bustle, the oven that refused to fully close on the first try, there were quiet pockets in between, little hushes that felt like stepping stones. One came when Marcus stepped outside to take a breath of cold air. Adrian followed without meaning to, camera still hanging around his neck. They stood side by side under the awning, watching their breath curl into clouds. "Kind of weird," Adrian said, Being somewhere so still after all that driving? Marcus nodded. Travel does that. It changes your pace, makes you see home differently. Adrian looked at his boots. Yeah. Another pause. Comfortable this time. You took some incredible photos today, Marcus said. I'm glad you brought your camera. Adrian's shoulders lifted, embarrassed but pleased. It's easier than talking sometimes. I get that, Marcus said with a small smile. Talking's overrated anyway. Adrian let out a quiet laugh. The cold bit at their noses, but neither hurried back in. It was a moment neither wanted to break, the kind born not out of effort but out of closeness, slowly earned on late-night roads and crooked-lit motels and hilltop stories. When they finally stepped back inside, warmth washed over them, as welcoming as Grandma Rita's arms the night before. The Thanksgiving table. By early afternoon, the house had shifted again. The kitchen quieted. The final dishes were placed on the counter one by one, gleaming under soft light, fragrant with the aromas of herbs and butter and warmth. The table filled, overflowing in the best way, until there was hardly room for elbows. Everyone found their seats with the gentle shuffle of familiarity, the clink of silverware. The sigh of chairs pulled close, the rustle of napkins unfolded, and then a settling silence. Not solemn, just full. Full of history, of tradition, of gratitude so deep it didn't need to be spoken out loud. Marcus cleared his throat softly. This is the part where Dad says something cheesy, Adrian muttered to Lila, who giggled. Marcus heard them. He smiled anyway. He stood, raising his glass, not high, not dramatically, but with sincere intention. To unexpected detours, he said, voice steady, and the memories we didn't know we needed. The table murmured in agreement, soft laughter, warm smiles, nods from those who knew exactly what he meant. Even the kids who exaggerated their groans for comedic effect were smiling. Marcus sat. Elena squeezed his hand beneath the table. Grandma Rita dabbed at the corner of her eye in a way she hoped no one would notice. And then, as all families do, they ate. They passed dishes to the left and then back to the right because someone missed the mashed potatoes the first time. They made jokes about who burned the pie last year and who almost burned the cornbread this year. They asked Lila to tell the motel cat story again. They pestered Adrian about his singing until he pretended to be offended. They laughed at Marcus's gravy theory, argued lovingly about football predictions, and told Grandma Rita that everything tasted perfect. Because it did. Every bite tasted like home. Like family. Like the kind of day you tuck carefully into your memory, knowing it will glow there for years. After the meal. When plates were scraped clean and forks rested contentedly on empty dishes, the family drifted into quieter corners of the house. Some went for walks, others went for naps. Some lingered over coffee. The Callahans stayed in the dining room a while longer. The sun was lowering, casting golden breath across the table, catching in cups and on surfaces like the last gift of the day. Lila rested her head on Elena's lap, full and content. Adrian sat on the floor with his back against the wall, scrolling through the photos he had taken, each one a tiny universe of feeling. Marcus leaned back in his chair. This, he said softly, mostly to himself, is the good stuff. Elena brushed a curl from Lila's forehead. Yes, it really is. Grandma Rita came in then, drying her hands on a dish towel. She looked around the room, at her son, her daughter-in-law, her grandchildren, her eyes warm and full. You brought joy into this house, she said. Pure joy. And though no one said it out loud, each of them felt it. Not joy brought from perfect plans, or smooth travels, or predictable days, but joy born from detours. From the slow, warm adventure that had unfolded one imperfect mile at a time. That night. As the house quieted and guests drifted home, the Callahans gathered in the living room, curled under quilts that smelled faintly of cedar. They talked softly. They reminisced. They let their eyes grow heavy. Adrian leaned against his dad's shoulder. Not a dramatic gesture, just a quiet one, subtle but unmistakably affectionate. Lila curled against Elena, humming some half-remembered karaoke tune from the road. Marcus looked over his family, his whole world arranged around him, and felt something settle in his chest. Gratitude, simple and deep. Elena reached across and took his hand. "We really did need this," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "We did." The fire crackled. The house breathed. The night settled around them like a warm blanket. And in that safe, glowing space, surrounded by people they loved and memories still warm from the making, the Callahans finally allowed themselves to rest, knowing the journey that brought them here would be told and retold in years to come. A story not of inconvenience, but of togetherness, of kindness, of laughter, of the beauty tucked quietly between the bigger plans. A story that had already become family legend.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay safe.